Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for our monthly installment of Office Hours presented by TopResume. My name is Amanda Augustine, and I'm the career advice expert for TopResume, the largest resume writing service in the world. You can request a free resume review at any time by going to topresume.com. And I'm very excited this month because I'm joined by a good friend and recruiting guru, particularly in the startup space, Mr. David Gaspin.
Hi.
Hello. Dave and I have known each other for a number of years.
Lots.
Lots. We go way back. But David, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? I'll give your official title. He is the SVP of HR for an organization called Delos. You can visit them at delos.com. And if you'd like to give us a little background on what you've been up to and that sort of thing.
Sure. So I'll start with now. Think of a little history lesson. So right now, as Amanda mentioned, so I'm running the human resources function at Delos, which is a really cool, innovative company in the wellness space, bringing wellness products programming into the built environment, so into your offices, homes. It's a lot of good stuff. Check out the website, and you can see a little bit about what we're up to. So in that role, I oversee everything related to the people, right? So it's recruiting, hiring, performance management, training and development, engagement, the whole kind of cycle. It's a really exciting space, a really exciting role. And how I got to that place really started with a totally different dream. I moved to New York after college to pursue a career on stage, on Broadway. Excuse me, came in as a musical theater guy. And
I love that.
Did that for a few years and said, okay, this is fun, but at some point maybe it's time to actually get a grown-up job. And was fortunate enough to have an entry-level role kind of fall into my lap at a fantastic company called Condé Nast, a big magazine publishing company. And from there, the rest is history. Went back to school, really figured out this is where I want to be, going through different roles within human resources, a lot of recruiting, a lot of other elements of HR and the people function, and went from bigger companies to smaller and smaller and smaller, and now I've really found, I think, my niche, which is going in and building these people functions, building these HR functions in small companies, in high growth companies, in these startups that are looking for something to really help to catapult them from a people perspective into that next stage of scaling and success. And so to me, no better place to be.
Now, what I love about having someone like David on this show is because I can tell you everything I've learned over the past nearly 15 years in kind of the job search, career coaching, resume writing space. But it's always better when you hear from someone like David, who's in the trenches, basically wearing every single hat that you can possibly wear, all at one place, and for many different organizations, large and small, over the course of your career. So you can really say, well, yeah, Amanda's saying that, and this is why people like me either love or hate to see these certain things in candidates, in their behavior, and particularly today's topic, on your resume. So what we're really here to do today is talk about what are the top resume mistakes that really make recruiters cringe, and hiring managers, to be quite honest. We recently did a survey. We surveyed nearly 400 people. I think we got up to about 376, 79, something along those lines, to find out what are the mistakes that they're like, we don't love it, but it's okay. And yeah, they do this, it's a deal breaker. I'm throwing the resume in the trash. And what I think is interesting, and we do have a press release that you can look at that gives you the top 10 reasons, but what I thought was very interesting about that list is that most of the things we thought were in people's control, most of them, for the most part, that they could do something with them. What I found even more interesting is that when you think about it, most resumes you apply online, there's some piece of software, we call it the bots, the robots, the applicant tracking system, is tossing candidates out who are obviously unqualified, or resumes are formatted in a way that is read as though they're unqualified. And then it gets to a recruiter, you guys are recruiting a million roles, maybe not a million, but tons of roles. You're seeing an average of what, 100, 250 applications per.
Sure.
And so I would dare say your first step is to try and figure out how many candidates you can eliminate, not trying to cherry pick the very best.
Absolutely. And I mean, really, and some of the things I'm going to say here may actually make people just hate recruiters even more than they probably already do.
They're really nice, I swear.
Some of us.
At least this one, yeah.
but no, you're exactly right. It's about whittling down the stack into a manageable number so that you can really spend the time and dig into the candidates that look the most promising, or at least the least unpromising.
Here you go.
And so here's where it gets really superficial and is going to make an entire job function sound maybe a little shallow, and we'll talk about the list itself and get into what these things are, but a lot of it is style related.
Yeah.
A lot of the things, if you look at this list, and I was just going through this, and the top several aren't related to the content itself and the meat of the resume. It's about how it's presented. And I think that comes across not only in the presentation itself, but to someone like me, it's a statement on judgment. It's a statement on professional norms and understanding that, and being someone who's going to be able to really excel in a professional environment and understand kind of what they should and should not be doing.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of judgment to make on what someone's resume looks like.
Yeah.
But that's all we have to go on at that moment, so we've got to work with what we have.
If you're just joining us, my name is Amanda Augustine. I'm excited to have recruiting guru and SVP of HR for Delos, David Gaspin, with me, and we're here to talk about the top resume mistakes that are considered deal breakers by recruiters and hiring managers. Again, TopResume is the largest resume writing service in the world, and you can request a free resume review at any time by going to topresume.com. I also hope you all stick around, because in a little bit we're also going to announce a really exciting initiative that we are introducing today, where you can get some really cool, valuable things for free, so please stick around. I think I teased that enough. Let's get into the meat of this. So we're looking at survey results. This is not just we made this list up in our heads, though we seem to agree with this list. But we're looking at the top 10 reasons recruiters say they get angry about resumes. And let's just look at the top 3 first, because I think we could kind of group all those together. Number 1, 4 out of 5 recruiters who took this survey said, this is a big deal breaker for me. Spelling and grammatical errors, typos, little silly things. Stop right there for a second. Number 2, incorrect or missing contact information. And there's a nuance there that I'll get into in a moment. And number 3, an unprofessional email address. Those were the top 3 reasons a recruiter wants to ditch a resume from the get-go. Let's talk about that. Now, obviously, this is a list. You can read this list. Really what we want to talk about here today is why. Why are these the things that bother recruiters so much? And I think part of that is the mindset that they're just trying to eliminate the least worthy candidates so they can focus on the meat. But these top 3, David, they're simple things. They're little things.
Absolutely. And I think the reason that they bug recruiters so much is these are things that are 100% within the control of the applicant.
Yeah.
With the exception of the nuance that I think
Yeah,
you're going to
yeah,
bring
yeah,
up later.
yeah.
But your spelling, your grammar,
Yeah.
your consistency of punctuation, it gets a little deep. I'm not going to reject somebody just for this, but it's slightly annoying.
Yeah.
Some of your bullet points end with a period, some don't.
Yeah.
Those are the little things that there's nothing that's out of your control as an applicant to make these things perfect. You can't always control the jobs that you've been able to get, the work that you've done, gaps in your resume, other things that are going on in the content, but you can control whether you've proofread this thing, words are spelled correctly, punctuation is there, whether your email address is something like your name or whether it's like hotmama69 at wherever. Those are the things.
Time to get rid of Kegmaster at Yahoo. Sorry.
Yeah. But those are the things that are just speak to me more about judgment. It's about if this person supposedly finding a job at job search is usually the most important thing going on in your life at that moment.
Yeah.
And if that's not important enough for you to really do it right, then how much faith do I have that if I hire you, you're going to be able to put more effort and more detail and more focus on the job that we're hiring you to do.
Yeah, there was a really good quote. So a member of our team recently interviewed David. It's on our site. If you go to topresume.com and click on career advice, it's one of the top articles right now. You'll see David's smiling face as part of the image there. And I love this quote where he said, nothing's worse than receiving a resume where the person says they're detail oriented and then you find the documents riddled with mistakes.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just, again, it's a judgment call. We do have a really great article on how to proofread your resume because, when you're so focused on a document, sometimes you get so deep into it, you don't see the mistakes anymore. That's why we say, hey, request a free resume critique. Pass it along to the friend who majored in English. There are other things. Print it out. Printing it out, it looks different in print than it does online. You catch more mistakes. Read it aloud. Read it from the bottom going up because you'll find random things. Spell check does not spell check for contextual errors. So if you say you are attacking your cover letter instead of attaching, spell check normally isn't going to catch those sorts of things. So lots there. In terms of the incorrect or missing contact information, if you request a free resume review at topresume.com, part of our review shows you what happens when your resume is parsed by an applicant tracking system. When it takes your information, what can it read and what can't it? And we found that 10% of those who request a free resume review, there is no contact information or parts of their contact information are missing. And a lot of people get upset and they say, my name's on it, my contact information's on it. How in the world can you tell me you don't see it? It's because the applicant tracking system, the software doesn't see it, which means the readout that a recruiter is seeing isn't there. And there are two major reasons why that happens. One, you put your contact information in the header portion of the Word document. If you put your information in the header of the Word document, applicant tracking systems typically cannot pick it up and identify it as contact information. Two is when you try and get fancy and you insert JPEGs, images. If you're trying to use a really cool font or a logo that has your contact information and you paste it in, whether it's in the header or not, applicant tracking systems cannot read images. And so it will come up as you do not have contact information. So those are big ones. If your resume's doing that, that's something to look at right away. All right, I don't want to dwell on that too much because we're only on number 3, and we got 10 at least to get through today. If you're just joining us, my name's Amanda Augustine. I'm the career advice expert for TopResume, the largest resume writing service in the world. And I am here with David Gaspin, SVP of HR and recruiting guru all around, to go through the top 10 resume deal breakers based on our survey results, and really why do these things irk the heck out of recruiters. So moving along, Mr. Gaspin. Number 4, outdated or irrelevant information such as hobbies, age, marital status, etc. and so forth. Now we talked about this. Obviously, we spoke to each other before we sat down, wouldn't you know? And we talked about this one in particular because there were a couple different ways that people can interpret this. I'd love to get your thoughts on, in that grouping, why is this number 4?
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
This is an interesting one because it's driven by, in my opinion, a combination of annoyance and fear. There is a difference, and I will separate this list out because right now what we have is hobbies, age, marital status, etc. That's the way the question was phrased. I'm going to separate out hobbies. Yeah. Hobbies, I think, maybe that falls under the annoying category, right? Unless it's something really, really cool.
Yeah.
Like creating AI-powered robots. Like, who doesn't want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Right? Nobody wants to hear about reading, spending time with family and friends.
Traveling.
Checking out
Everyone travels.
Yeah, checking out new restaurants. Like, that's...
Yeah.
Now, where we get into the more interesting pieces is age, marital status, those types of personal information.
Yeah.
There is a legitimate fear among recruiters and HR people, and we drill it into the heads of our hiring managers about being perceived to have any sort of preferential treatment based on certain things: age, marital status, religion, ethnicity, all of these elements. And so when someone starts putting things like age or marital status or anything else like that on their resume, a kind of a gut reaction is, I don't want to see it, put it away. And that, for a lot of people, leads to just an automatic reject. It's saying anyone that puts their age, so that there's no way that I can be construed as having any kind of illegal action or protected action here. Anyone that puts their age is automatically out. Anyone that puts their marital status is automatically out. Those are things that it's easy to make that a rule so that you are eliminating risk. You could be missing out on a fantastic resume, a fantastic candidate, but those are the types of things that just have that visceral reaction from so many recruiters that it can really be a huge detriment.
And let's just make sure we clarify here. We're talking about a U.S. professional resume. An international CV, the rules are very different. Some of this information is pretty commonplace over there. If you're doing a federal resume, meaning that you're applying for a job in the U.S. federal government, some of this information is absolutely mandatory. Things that are complete no-nos in a regular professional resume are actually required, but we're talking about what the average professional should be doing with their resume for a role in the United States. So if anybody is coming from overseas and looking to apply for a job in the United States, this is really important for you to understand that some of the best practices for CVs overseas will actually get you in trouble or get you thrown to the trash pile in the US. I want to skip down in the list a little bit because I think it really number 9 on this list, you can kind of bundle in with this number 4 because it's including a headshot.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, and again, we're talking about US-based professional jobs, right? If you're putting a headshot in your resume,
and you're not an actor, or a personality,
I'm thinking one of two things. Either you are just completely out of touch with business norms, which are easily accessible with a quick Google search or going to any number of friends or services that are out there, that you just are willfully ignorant of kind of those norms. Or B, and this is what really gets me, you think you're so beautiful, so handsome, that is going to get you in the door. I'm going to say, wow, that is a good looking candidate. I've got to interview this one. And to me, again, it's a judgment call, and I'm going to project my own feelings that you all also have this huge ego problem, which may or may not be accurate, but regardless, it's going to get you sent away. It also ties into the age and ethnicity piece, which is if I see this is a obviously young white person and I have any risk of treating that person differently than an older minority candidate, all pictures automatically go. And that's my personal rule of thumb. If there's a headshot on here, I'm not reading the rest of the resume.
I've heard that from more than one recruiter, that there are some that if there's a picture or any of that extra information that we don't want to see because it opens us up to liability, someone could claim that we were discriminating against them, it automatically goes in the pile. And I don't know if this is still the same today, but the most expensive, largest, for the big companies package on LinkedIn for recruiters actually gave you the ability to remove names and remove the pictures so that you couldn't accidentally have some unintentional bias when you were reviewing candidates through LinkedIn. I don't know if that's still the case, but it just goes to show LinkedIn spent the time to build that feature because it was important enough for large organizations. So it goes to show what people are concerned about or scared to see when they're recruiting. I also think there's a lot of confusion, and I thought the headshot thing was everyone got that, and then we've seen it cropping up again. And I'm gonna, really point a finger at social media, and particularly LinkedIn, because you're 40% more likely to get clicked upon when you include a headshot. Sure. We always say an appropriate headshot, but there's still different pieces, right? In your mind, how do you distinguish the two? Because let's be honest, don't you Google the person and look them up on LinkedIn?
I definitely look them up. If it's someone that I'm interested in talking to, if it's someone that I think there's some stuff there, or if there are unanswered questions. That maybe it's like, oh, this resume looks kind of interesting, but there are some things that look a little odd or don't add up. That's when I'll maybe do some secondary research. Okay. And yes, it's true. There are different norms for different media. right?
Yeah.
For a resume, it is, and there are a million experts out there who will argue that this is outdated and the resume as we know it is dead and it's all about the next thing. They've been saying that for my entire career,
Yeah.
and so far it hasn't been borne out. A resume is a very specific piece of marketing material.
Yeah.
It is a black and white, text-focused snapshot of your professional history to date, or the things at least that you want to highlight for a particular job. Now, LinkedIn or any other social media, different norms.
Yeah.
If I look someone up on LinkedIn and they don't have a picture, that's going to be almost to me the same response that I'm going to have if they have a headshot on their resume. Because I'm going to say this is someone who either is not technologically savvy enough to get that, someone who's not interested in or up on kind of the cultural norms around this piece of technology.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as just not having a LinkedIn profile, which I think is an almost unforgivable crime
Another
in
conversation.
the professional, in let's say a professional white collar world.
Yeah.
But not having a headshot to me is
On your
it's a
LinkedIn
downside.
profile.
On your LinkedIn profile, yes, is a downside to me.
It's interesting, and yeah, there are different rules for different formats. Think of it as, everything you're doing for your job search and all the different ways you're branding yourself. It's an advertising campaign, and you are advertising the most valuable, important resource you will ever market in your entire life, and that's you and your candidacy. And the way that Nike talks about their products on Facebook versus what they do in a print ad versus what they do in a commercial are all different. You know it's Nike, you always know that it's the same brand, but they're going to position it differently and they're going to give you different pieces of information in different snapshots. And it's the same thing as a job seeker. I want to take a moment right now because we've gotten about halfway through the list. We did the top 4 and then we jumped to number 9 because it really fit in there on the resume deal breakers that really just annoy the heck out of recruiters and are more likely to get your resume tossed in the trash. I want to take a moment because TopResume is actually launching a brand new initiative starting this month. We are now offering a free resume makeover, and this is a monthly contest. If you look in the comments below, my TopResume teammates are going to be sharing the URL with you. If you go to topresume.com and click on career advice, you'll see pop-ups to enter the contest as well on the right-hand side. Basically, what we're going to do is you enter once, you don't have to enter every month, but once a month, we're going to pull one of those resumes out of the hopper, and we're going to give you a completely free resume makeover. All we ask is that you share a little bit of your story and kind of where you're going and what you want to do, and then we're going to sanitize the heck out of that and write an anonymous story that we can put on the blog. But you're going to get a free resume makeover and all the bells and whistles that come with that. So definitely check out topresume.com. Check out the link below that my colleague Jenna is sharing with all of you, and sign up for this free resume makeover. I mean, what do you have to lose? Okay, getting back to the topic at hand. Again, I'm Amanda Augustine, career advice expert for TopResume, and I am here with recruiting guru and SVP of HR for Delos, David Gaspin, and we're talking about not only what resume mistakes made the top list of most cringeworthy, deal breaker kind of issues, but why, so you really understand it's not as arbitrary as it may appear. I like this number 5, and I will say number 5 is a challenging one because this also came up as one of the top concerns that job seekers have about writing their resume, and it's this failure to demonstrate and quantify results. I like to think of a resume as the description of a food item on a menu versus the list of ingredients in the cookbook. Meaning that on a menu, you're talking all about the taste and the sensations and all the wonderful things, the benefits of eating this meal, where the recipe is giving you the ingredients, black and white. What do you need? What do you need to make this, and how are you going to make it? I think that's why recruiters really want to see the results, because they're trying to get at not just what you do, but what have you produced as a result. And I'd love to get more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a huge and obvious difference when you're reading through a resume between one that simply regurgitates a job description, that someone went back and found the job posting from the job they're currently in and said, okay, here are the bullet points from that, I'm going to put this in my resume. Responsible for, partnered with blah, blah, blah to blah, 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 blah. Those are job description bullet points. Show me what you've done. I created this program that knitted this result. I improved this metric by X. And for some jobs, for some functions, I understand it is hard to find those numbers. It's hard to quantify those things. I'm in human resources. What am I quantifying, right? Like, this is about as like, quote unquote touchy-feely of a career path as there is. But you look at anything you can. How many people have I hired? How long have they stayed? Have they been successful? How many people have been through different training programs, and what's been the outcome of that in terms of engagement or productivity? It's finding the ways that you have had an effect on the business that you're working for. And it doesn't necessarily have to be numbers. It's easier for salespeople, right? For digital marketers, for people whose jobs are inherently quantifiable, right? But there's something that you've done, whether a customer service representative, right? Have you had low escalation numbers in terms of the calls that you've taken? What does that look like? Figure out what's going to be important and what the actual effect is on the business that you've had, and put those in your resume. I'd rather see that because it shows me how good you are at what you've done rather than just what you were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. There's an article that I'm hoping we can share with you that talks about building a brag book. And I think this is one of those really important things that if you don't have this today, you want to, second this live chat's over, start making one, because if you leave a job unexpectedly, either of your own will or the organization's, you may not have access to the data that you need to really quantify and demonstrate your value and the results that you've helped contribute to. So I think it's really important. I don't care if it's a Google Doc, a Word doc, it's a composition notebook, whatever it is, it's a folder on your personal laptop. And I want to emphasize, make sure it's on something that you own and that doesn't get taken away when the company is no longer in the picture. Because I have seen that happen where you have former colleagues going, could you forward me that document or that email to I need those numbers. And you may not have that ability. So have a spot where you're, documenting your performance reviews, all those things, so that when it is time to sit down and write your resume, either on your own or with a professional resume writer like the service TopResume, that you have all the information available to make the best document possible. The one thing that we do here is because we work with people who are fresh out of school. We work with people who, are waiters, where they're saying, what the heck am I supposed to do? And one of my colleagues, Caleb, framed this, and I thought it was really important. When you're really stretching for that, think about if you were to take a couple days off of work, what wouldn't get done? What would fall through the cracks, and why would that be a problem that it fell through the cracks? And that's kind of the information that you pinpoint on. Is it that, I remember I wrote a resume for a guy who has been a waiter for 10 years and was looking to move into sales. And we were looking at sales jobs that, that dealt with the industry he knew really well, food and beverage, restaurant, hospitality, things along those lines. And the one thing that we'd seen in his career is everywhere he went, he would end up being picked to train everybody else who was new on the staff, or he was always given the best time slots because he was the best at upselling people into more expensive meals or more expensive drinks. So there's still something there. You may not have numbers behind it, but there's still something to point to. And so think of it that way. How have you made things faster, better, made people happier, and work along those lines. Now, I did want to pick on one thing that you said, or not pick, but just question a little bit, because you said, the responsible for, I hate that. I'm curious to dig a little bit to see if we have complete different opinions, or if we're just thinking about it different ways. Mm-hmm. I still like the little paragraph that says, this is what my role consisted of. Here are the bullet points that call attention to what I was able to produce. Do you like that little blurb? Do you care about it?
I think, honestly, it depends. It depends on the role and what you've been doing. If you are a sales rep, right? I don't need a paragraph that tells me what that means.
Yeah.
If you are something else that I can't think of off the top of my head, but that maybe is a less obvious job title or something where it's
More
what exactly
nuanced,
does
yeah.
that mean? Then I think it makes sense. It's also, like so many things, a question of space,
Yeah.
right?
that's
Do
true.
you need filler, or do you need to try to get more meat into
Yeah.
a finite amount of space? And I think
That's
so it can
fair.
go either way based on those things.
That's really fair. That's really fair. I think it's interesting. Oh no, we got to go to QA soon, guys. I got my little flag. I will say that if you have a job title that people do not understand outside your industry or your company, put in parentheses what it really means. Or put that first and then put in parentheses the official title. It's not lying, you're just clarifying for who's ever reading your resume.
I worked in a company where our entire sales force, their title was business analyst.
Oh God, never, yeah.
You got to explain that.
Yeah. Then you can have a little paragraph because someone's gonna have to explain that. Or VP of Ops can mean a lot of different things. All right, moving along because I do want to get through the rest of the list. We have number 6 is annoying buzzwords or obvious keyword stuffing. First of all, I'd like to say that buzzwords and keywords I think are two completely different things. Would you agree?
I do agree.
Okay.
I think buzzwords are things that will annoy you if someone says them to you in person, right?
I'm a self-starter,
Yeah,
David
I'm
Gaspin.
self-starter. I found synergies, and I ideated, and I iterated, and I did all of the, like, those don't mean anything. Keywords are different, but keywords, honestly, more often than not, if you've got a well thought out resume and you're actually describing your contributions and what you've done, they're going to be organic.
Yeah.
It's not like, in my opinion, and you probably know more than I do, Amanda, about the back end of
I got some things I want to say.
ATS systems and things like that. But for me, I think the keywords, if you're painting an accurate picture, and not just using a bunch of buzzwords, they're going to probably show up the way you want them to.
I think when you start throwing in words because you know you're supposed to have certain words in there, that's definitely a problem. I think it is important though, because before it gets to someone like David, 9 times out of 10, particularly if you're dealing with larger companies, it's going through a piece of software. And so there is a strategy to optimizing your resume based on the keywords that you're seeing in the job description. And it's not just they're asking they're asking me to do one thing and I'm saying it a different way. You actually have to use the specific language, or you want to use both the initials as well as the spelled out term because you don't know what that company might be using. So I think it's important in those instances that you want to be careful because yes, you don't want it to be this obvious where you've thrown these words in and it sounds ridiculous. But to get to that person to make that judgment call, it has to pass through a piece of technology, and that's where it gets that's where it's nuanced, and that's frankly why many people use a professional resume writer. Because why in the world should you, average Joe, have to figure that nonsense out? If you can provide some job descriptions of what you're looking for and the types of roles that you feel you're qualified for, a resume writer can figure out an organic way to incorporate that in without it seeming very unnatural or ridiculous. Enough said on that.
I'll agree with that.
Okay. All right. Agree to agree. I like that. Number 7, too generalized, not customized to match the job listing. Again, if you're just joining us, my name is Amanda Augustine. I'm the career advice expert for TopResume. And I am here with recruiting guru, SVP of HR for Delos, David Gaspin, to look at this list of the top 10 resume deal breakers according to a recent survey by TopResume, and really why are they an issue and what can you do to avoid them. So we are up to number 7. Technically we're at 8 because we already did number 9. So we only have a few more to go, but we're talking about when the resume is really not customized in any way for the job description. I'm very interested in your feedback on this one because this can go many different ways,
Yes.
I think.
I think there is a point to which I can support this.
Got
right?
it.
Which is the resume has to demonstrate a background, a professional background that can conceivably match the job in question.
Yeah.
Right? Show me that you've done things that are similar to what I'm asking you to do, or that you've done things that are similar to what I have said in my job posting that you need to have done.
Yeah.
Now, then there's a line. And here's where I think there's a probably outdated mentality at this point within a lot of recruiters, which doesn't make it any less real or any less of something that job seekers need to work with. But there is an entitlement mentality among recruiters, among hiring managers, among companies. And it's not universal, but it's prevalent. Not uncommon, where the feeling is, I'm doing you a favor by hiring you. I'm doing something for you. And so if you haven't bent over backwards to show me that you have actually put, an extra 3 hours of work into creating this perfectly customized resume that shows me and mirrors the job that I'm hiring for, that you're not worth my time. You know what? I disagree with it. I think that's fair. Obviously hiring and employment, it's a partnership. Everybody gets something and everybody gives something.
Yep.
And
you want to work for him.
Well, yeah. But that doesn't make it any less of a reality that there are plenty of recruiters and plenty of companies out there that want to see, how badly do you want to work for me? How much extra work did you do to get my attention?
Yeah, I mean, this might, and just to let you know, 32% of those polled listed this as one of their top reasons. So 1 out of 3. So, better than a 50-50 shot at least. I think of it as, again, you're looking at a marketing document. Your resume is a marketing document, and so you want to make sure that whatever you're including in this document is supporting why you're qualified for the role at hand and for those specific requirements. I'm actually against crazy customization of every resume for every job application. 1, that is ridiculously time intensive. 2, it's real fun when you don't organize your files very well and you don't know what version you sent to this company. So if they call you back, you have no idea what they're looking at, and it's really bad when you have to ask them. And God forbid you named them all the same thing. It's a nightmare. I really advise against ever overhauling your resume for every job that you're going after. Same reason why I think you can't have 3 different job goals, because that would require 3 different resumes. And then what do you do on your LinkedIn profile? Because you can't be 3 people. You look like you have a split personality. What I do recommend is that if you're using your brag book to take and create bullets under each job that talk about the different things you've done there, some lend themselves to demonstrating certain skill sets, some will lend themselves to demonstrating other skill sets. Swap them in and out based on what they're looking for. Take the professional title at the top of your resume and tweak that to match the title on the job description. Look at your section for core competency or areas of expertise, and you may swap some of those words out to speak to whatever you're seeing in the job description. And that's kind of the extent of it. That they want to make sure you're not sending a resume that just says, I did all this and I could use it to apply to 17 very different jobs, because I can't really support why I'm qualified for any of them. And I think that's where the recruiters get upset. It's like, you haven't told me anything on this resume that explains why you would be applying to this job.
Absolutely, and I have seen magical things happen from simply reordering the bullet points.
Yeah, that's fair.
Show me the most important things for this job first. Maybe they were the least important for the last job you applied for, but you've got them. Move them to the top. Yeah. It seems simple and it seems ridiculous that you should have to do that as a job seeker, but you know what? My people are not always willing to put the extra effort into going down beyond the first 3 bullet points. And so, again, an unfortunate reality.
All right, we have 2 more to go. Again, my name is Amanda Augustine, career advice expert for TopResume. You can request a free resume review at any time by going to topresume.com. And if you would like to avoid this entire list of resume deal breakers that really drive recruiters crazy, sign up, enter to win our monthly contest where you can get a free resume makeover. The link is in the live chat below. You can also go to topresume.com and click on career advice, and there will also be prompts for you to sign up from there. topresume.com/resume-makeover. All right, I am here with David Gaspin, recruiting guru and SVP of HR, and we are down to the bottom of our list of resume deal breakers. So next on our list is repetitive words and phrases used in multiple job descriptions. And this actually got 20% of those polled to say, yeah, this drives me insane. Give me the 10-second explanation as to why this is so annoying and what you'd recommend they do.
If you have done something repetitively in multiple jobs, just put it in the most recent job.
Okay.
Once I've seen it, I've seen that you've done it, I've seen that you've accomplished it. I don't need to see that you did it in the 5 jobs you had before this. The bullets should be getting fewer and fewer as you go down anyway. I'm most interested
further in your history.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm most interested in what you have been doing most recently.
Yeah.
So you don't need to repeat, just leave it out of the further back job listings.
That's why we're always truncating resumes, and if you have a ton of experience, we're still trying to get you down to 2 pages, because they really care about what have you been doing most recently and how does that support what you're trying to do next. So save it for the top. I like that a lot. Okay. We are skipping number 9 because that was including a headshot. We talked about that earlier, but the very last, number 10, resume deal breaker to make this top list, format and or design is too elaborate. And I'm kind of excited this one made the top 10 because, everyone's like, oh, I want a slick design, I want a pretty design, I want these block things, I want to add images. Why does it annoy you when people don't use a traditional format and or design, David Gaskin?
There are 2 reasons.
Okay, lay it on me.
One is I don't care. If you're not a designer, then I don't care what kind of template you found online to make a pretty resume. Mm-hmm. Show me the text. It's just the facts, right? That's what I'm looking for. And everything else is a distraction, and everything else tells me that you may be trying to distract me from some of the content on your resume by making something pretty. Yeah. Dime a dozen career coaches will tell you you need to stand out. You should stand out. Your resume does not need to stand out. Your resume needs to have the right content. The second reason is our old friend and foe, the applicant tracking system, does not like fancy formatting.
No, it does not.
If you've got images on your resume and that's how you've done the design, those don't get picked up at all.
Yeah.
If you've got weird bullet pointy things and designy elements and boxes and squares and things, if I'm reading a parsed resume, which is basically just the data that the system spits out, it is going to look like just a jumble. Because all of that stuff gets interpreted by the system as weird random characters. Yeah. And so I can't even read your resume at that point. Yeah. So that's the second reason.
100% agree. I would like to think I'm not a dime a dozen career coach, and I do get asked a lot, by publications, how does a candidate make their resume stand out? I'm like, make it speak to the qualifications of the role. That's what they care about. Mm-hmm. You want white space. You want it to be easy to scan. We know that the average recruiter spends 6 seconds. It's actually 6.2 if you want to get really technical. 6.2 seconds scanning a resume to decide if it's worth their time or not. If they have to hunt and peck for the 6 pieces of key information they care about, they're going to skip over you because they don't want to have to hunt. They have 249 other applications behind yours to review. So I think that's a pretty comprehensive list, and I'm sure everyone has their own opinions. There are other things that did not make the list. I don't think there's any point or time to go into those, but again, definitely check out the press release. We are going to be adding some articles over the coming days that will go into every single one of these into deeper detail, and we will of course be doing a recap of this office hours. So we'll give you some more detail on not only why are these resume deal breakers, but what you can do to avoid them. Now, I want to make sure we have time for some Q&A. Jenna, do we have any questions from the audience?
We do.
Excellent.
So Venetia asks, is it advisable to send a recruiter a copy of your resume and work with them to revise it for different positions?
So I would say that's the difference between an agency recruiter or third-party recruiter and a corporate recruiter like David. That would be the first.
Yeah, I think I'm assuming that we're talking about a third-party recruiter in this question, and I think always take comments and take some guidance from that recruiter. This is a partner in your job search. They ultimately are. Their goal is to fill a job. Their goal is not to get you a job. Their goal is to fill a job for the company that's paying them to fill that job. That said, if they think that with some tweaks on your resume, you can be the person that fills that job, then I would listen, because chances are they know a little bit about what that company's looking for.
Yeah, I'd say there's 2 types of third-party recruiters. There's retained recruiters, which are being paid a monthly fee whether they fill a position or not, and they often have exclusive rights to that job opening. and then there are contingency recruiters, and there are a lot more of those out there. Just
90% of the
yeah,
market.
it's the and basically they don't get paid unless they're the person who places the right. Their fee is contingent upon getting their candidate hired. So they'll be the ones that will blast everyone, and you get really annoyed because you're like, this is not at all what I said I'm interested in. But they're also the one that if they think you're the right candidate, they will probably work harder to help you tweak your resume because their pay depends on you getting the job. So definitely take it with a grain of salt.
So Doug has heard that including a PS at the end of your cover letter is more visible than the rest of the letter itself. How do you guys feel about that, and is there a study somewhere that backs up that claim?
I have thoughts on that, but I'm happy if you have a thought on that.
I will disagree with that statement. I think that there is no PS. Because a PS by definition is a postscript, which means it's something you thought of after you finished writing the letter. You should have thought before you wrote that cover letter. And so everything that's important should be right there. It shouldn't be long enough to need a PS. That's my personal opinion. And I think it can make it look strangely informal and unorganized. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I think it does make it look informal. I think you have to be really cognizant of the company culture, and is it a super casual environment where, in a very young company where that might make sense. I also, my college background is in marketing, and frankly, that's a marketing ploy. We do things, marketers do things like that because we're trying to catch the eye. And yes, as a job seeker, you are a marketer, but I think you really got to be cognizant of who are you dealing with. A very traditional, institution is going to see that as informal and careless, and poor judgment. Some other places it might fly. What I would say is reserve judgment and really consider it only when you know someone who works at the company who can give you a good opinion. I have not heard of one study on that, particular to the job search. I'm sure there are studies related to email marketing. Similar in email marketing, putting an RE before your subject line or putting the person's name in the subject line can make somebody more likely to open it. There are little marketing ploys. Some will translate well into the job search, some not so much.
One caveat also, if you're doing that, if you want to put a PS, what comes after that PS really needs to be good.
That's true.
It needs to be worth it. Like, just a PS, I'm really interested in this job, is a waste of space and time.
Yeah, 100%.
So Helena has a lot of experience in various positions. She's very versatile, resourceful, and adaptable. She doesn't want to write War and Peace Part 2 when setting out to write her resume, but how does she write a resume that encompasses all of her experience?
So let's definitely share that article, 11 Tips to Creating the Perfect Resume, because I think that's going to be helpful. I know I harp on this a lot, but a resume is a marketing document, and you may have done a lot of things, and you're probably going to have to write, Helena, the War and Peace version. It may not be perfect language, but you're going to have to get it all out on pen and paper or your laptop. And then you're going to pick out the pieces based on, does this support my current goal? The resume needs to be written with a goal in mind. To write a resume when you have no idea what you want to do is incredibly challenging, and I would say not a good use of your time. You got to take a step back and figure out what direction you want to go, and then based on that, what parts of your history and your skill set are worth showcasing in this no more than 2-page document.
I agree, and I think there's also a finite amount of history that you need to include in any detail.
Yeah.
I think that, what's the kind of conventional wisdom now is go back 10 to 15 years and no more than that.
No more than 15 years.
So if you have spent a 30-year career getting to this point where you are an executive vice president of marketing, I'm really interested in probably the last 10 years that you've spent as a marketing leader. I'm much less interested in the 10 years you spent before that when you were a marketing coordinator and kind of going through those more junior level roles, because frankly they're going to have a lot less to do with what you want to do now. So I think the further back you go, the less detail you need to include, and you get to a point where this was so far removed that literally all I have is company title dates, and you don't actually have any detail under those. And I think that most people won't bat an eye at that.
Yeah, we normally at TopResume, which again, TopResume, largest resume writing service in the world, check us out for a free resume critique. That's good, right? But
So.
thank you. I try. What we recommend is normally when you do the 15-year cutoff point, you can either have a career note that says previous experience includes this type of work at these types of company, additional details available upon request, or if you really just want to show the progression of your career, you have earlier work history as a heading and you just have title, company name, perhaps location, that's about it. The career note's good if you're trying to name drop something other than just a company name, because there was a really great client that's still, brag worthy. I'm getting the sense, Helena, because you said you're very adaptable and flexible, you may have had like a number of different chapters, shall we say, to your career. I wouldn't necessarily remove the entire piece or an entire job, because then you're going to have gaps on your resume and recruiters will look at that and assume you just weren't working. But I would just minimize as much as humanly possible the details around that role if it's not really relevant and supporting your current job goals. So don't make it a resume gap for yourself, but just minimize the details.
Helena had a second question. She has a friend who is going back to work after experiencing an injury.
Mm-hmm.
How should her friend address the gap in employment?
I have opinions, but I would really love to know your opinion, because it's different when you're practicing as a recruiter. What do you care about?
I honestly think that if there is a solid work history prior to that gap, that it's honestly not something to address on a resume.
Yeah.
I believe that you leave it silent, you let your work history speak for itself, and it's something where if it is brought up in an interview or when you're speaking with a company, simply say, I had some health issues I was dealing with, I got through that, I'm past it, I'm ready to move forward, without going into any detail or anything about what happened. Or you can say I suffered an injury that I was dealing with the aftermath and now I'm finished. Make it clear that you're finished and ready to be back to kind of full function. But I think on a resume, it's not something you need to actually point out at all.
Yeah, it's not on the resume, but in the interview, it's acknowledge and then move forward about talking about the position, why you're excited about the position, why you're qualified for that position. I agree. I don't think you put it on your resume whatsoever. There's a lot of reasons why you may have a gap like that, right? You could have taken a gap year. You could have been taking care of a sick relative. You could have been battling something. You may have been a stay-at-home mom or dad, and that's a really common one. If it's something like you went back to school or something like that, I think you can put a line, that just makes sure that they see your education at the bottom and don't miss that. But other than that, if it's a really personal thing, I would leave it alone. The only thing I might suggest is that if you can, in that spot, put where you're doing volunteer work that's relevant. And I'm a big fan of skill-based volunteering. Catch a Fire is a really cool site for that. There's a few others out there, but that's the one that pops to mind. If you Google skill-based volunteer opportunities, there's about 5 or 6 primary sites that you can hit up where they will match your skill set with a worthy organization so you can still leverage your skills. If you took a course, you might incorporate that in just to say, hey, I may have not been in a paid job, but I was still doing something to keep my skills sharp or to keep my pulse on the industry. That's great, but if you can't, don't dedicate time to talking about your personal issues on your resume. This is business, not personal.
So Venetia has been told to use LinkedIn as a resume, essentially that her profile should mirror her resume. Is this actually the case?
I think if you are using LinkedIn to mirror your resume, it's not a bad strategy if you are job seeking. You don't want to do it the other way around. Now, I'll tell you why, is because so many online job application sites or tools that you're going to find when you're applying for jobs are going to have a button that says apply with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And regardless of whether we think that's a good thing or not, it's a reality. And so what you want in that case is for your LinkedIn profile to give the same information that you would want your resume to give. So for that reason, I think it does make sense.
Yeah, I agree that your LinkedIn profile has to tell the same story as your resume. The same goals have to be there. You may put something in the summary that's more personal and using I and me and that sort of thing. But below, that's probably your professional summary from your resume, right. And that the information underneath your job titles in that experience definitely has to tell the same story, have the same dates, have the same title names. I think that's very important because a lot of people use LinkedIn as a gut check to see how truthful were you, or is there something sketchy going on, because if they're telling two different stories, again, you can't have 3 different versions of your resume because you can only have one LinkedIn profile. So what do you do in those instances?
Right. I love that you talked about kind of that gut check, right? Because your LinkedIn profile, your coworkers can see it, your boss can see it, everybody can see it, and you're probably not going to just make a bunch of stuff up.
Or you're really bold if you are, and it's not a good idea. We recommend against that. The one thing I will say which is nice about LinkedIn, and just a heads up, TopResume does do LinkedIn makeovers as well, and if you buy our most premium resume package, we throw the LinkedIn package in as well. The nice thing about LinkedIn is you can add more color to your personality and your experience. The resume is still a very black and white kind of document. It is a marketing tool, but it's still more of a straightforward, this is my value, this is what I've done and how it relates to the role. In LinkedIn, you can upload samples of your work. You can put your blog. You can blog on it. You can share articles you find interesting and state your point of view. You can get involved in the LinkedIn groups. So I feel like they're kind of phasing out a little bit in popularity. But there are other things. People can have referrals written out there, so it adds a more three-dimensional view of you as a person and also the personality behind you. So take advantage of that.
So Peter shared a story in which...
Peter Stearns?
Yes.
Hi, Peter.
Shared a story in which including a hobby on one's resume got somebody rejected for the job because they didn't know that this specific hobby was a touchy subject for the recruiter. Essentially, the question is, what do you think of including hobbies on your resume?
We've actually talked about this at length, interestingly enough.
Know your audience.
Yeah, 100%.
And when in doubt, leave it off.
Yeah.
There are, again, very few hobbies unless it is, inventing a new social media platform or something that's like interesting as an accomplishment.
When was the last time you were looking at a candidate and they had a hobby on there and it struck you, whether it was on their LinkedIn profile or their resume, and it struck up a conversation or you found it interesting? Can you think of the time when that
In fact, I can.
Please,
now,
do tell.
It does happen. I will see something that looks interesting as a hobby, and that will be a conversation in an interview.
Yeah.
Now, it has never been a deciding factor on whether or not to conduct that interview.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say that be careful if anything has some sort of religious affiliation or political affiliation, just take it off unless you are applying to a religious association or political association. Again, it's about knowing your audience and knowing what would be considered touchy or not. Having someone who works at the company to give you that insider tip is really important. I really only recommend adding hobbies if it's something that actually that is a qualification in a way for the role. So maybe you're trying to do a career change, but things you've been doing on the side are actually just as, if not more relevant to explaining why you're qualified for the role. Then that's a really good spot to elaborate on that, and you might find a way to include that in your work experience in some way, shape, or form if it's that important. It's really more of filler. I don't hate it, but I really only suggest it for someone who's fresh out of school and is really struggling to get one full page of information on a resume. If you don't need it, I don't see a reason to have it.
Totally agree.
And we have one last question from Doug. So he knows you should include accomplishments on your resume, but to fill out the rest of the space, is it okay to include other things like your position's duties?
Absolutely. It's not just going to be a list of here are all the fantastic results I've achieved. That's not. I don't think that's a realistic expectation, right? So yes, of course, it's about how you present it, though. I would again say, not responsible for X, Y, Z. It's here's what I did. I created and maintained X, Y, Z. I coordinated these programs. So putting those descriptions that are talking about what you've done in the role, for sure, and what your job was. But I would definitely gear more towards an action-oriented language, right? So these are things that I did, not things that I was supposed to do.
Action verbs. We talk about action verbs all the time. We have a million articles. I'm sure we did not pull one ahead of time for this talk, but we should have in retrospect. If you go to our site, TopResume.com and click on career advice, if you search for the word action verbs, there will be a plethora of articles that are talking about what words and phrases are recommended to use. And I think it comes back to one of the resume deal breakers about, repetitive words. I definitely use the word responsible for sometimes. I do, because I don't want to have 6 short sentences in a little blurb sometimes. So if I can say responsible for X, Y, and Z, and I'm tying it to some sort of impact or result, I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's when you use it 17 times on the resume that it becomes a problem. If it's used once or twice, I don't think it's a big deal. If it's the beginning of every sentence or every other sentence, or it starts every roll-off, that's when it becomes an issue. And so I think it's much more, I do believe in giving a little blurb, and that blurb's length will change based on how comprehensive, complex, or unusual the role is, explaining just this is what I'm responsible for handling and doing, and then using the bullets to call out anywhere from 2 to 5, the things that I helped contribute to or accomplish or bring as a result or bring to fruition as a result of being in that role with that responsibility, with that budget, that sort of thing. So I use responsible. Just saying.
Sometimes you have to get creative, right? Because you can't have every bullet point start with managed or coordinated.
Right. And there is an article on there called Words and Phrases to Remove from Your Resume, and there's a whole list of, instead of managed, here are 7 other verbs you could try using. Just switch them up, because it's even just making sure that the person scanning your resume doesn't get fatigued or start glossing over because they're seeing the same word a million times. It happens. I will say I also use a little fluffy little fluffy buzzwords when I'm putting together a professional statement. I try not to pack it in, but to put a pretty little paragraph together, you end up adding a couple in there. I think the key is you don't overdo it, and that there's substance behind that fluff. I'm never going to say someone's a leader if I can't then talk about what happened or what they were able to create or do as a result of their leadership. So it's always show, don't tell. Don't say you're proactive, show what you've done because you are proactive. Anything else, Miss Jenna? Excellent. I'm sure we have run over because, it was a good conversation, though. I liked it. It was good. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Couple things I want to remind you. We now have this resume makeover contest going on. It's a monthly contest, so definitely sign up. Go to topresume.com/resume-makeover, and you can sign up to win a free resume makeover. We're pulling a winner every month, and you'll get to see, kind of these different stories out there about what we're doing. In the meantime, we'll also give you a free resume critique if you sign up. And if you're just interested in the critique, go to topresume.com and definitely request your free resume review. To find out more about our upcoming events, make sure you like Top Resume's Facebook page. And I just want to say a very hearty thank you to Mr. David Gaspin, the SVP of HR for Delos. You can check out delos.com to find out about their career opportunities and the cool things they're doing in this really niche industry that I gotta say it's really cool when you start talking about it. So definitely dig in there. And then where can they find out more about you and in your musings on the recruiting world?
Well, I've got plenty of musings at a lovely little chestnut I like to call hrdave.com. So go ahead and check that out. There's some new stuff. There's a lot of old stuff. And obviously, any questions there can come through the site, and I'd be more than happy to answer anything that comes through.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next month for another installment of Office Hours. Take care.